Mr. Xelpi Magana Jr., a teacher of Jose Panganiban National High School. So, my lesson for today, the remedial lesson which I am going to give you class, is about rational expressions involving quadratic trinomials. So, our objective for today class are to define quadratic trinomials, how to factor quadratic trinomials, and of course, to simplify rational expressions involving quadratic trinomials. Alright, so what are quadratic trinomials? Okay, as defined, quadratic trinomials is a polynomial with three distinct terms, the highest degree of which is of the second degree. But take note, class, that there are some quadratic trinomials which are exactly different from the others. Look at now the first one. X squared minus 5x plus 6 are or is an example of quadratic trinomials. This part or term is your A. Generally speaking, class, quadratic trinomials are expressed as ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is your A, this is your B, and this is your C. Alright. In here, your first term is 1. So no need to write 1 in here. Okay? So it is understood that your coefficient of x here is 1. And of course, these terms, A is 2, and this one is 4. Okay, take note, class. You've got to consider this kind of trinomials just because later you are now to discover how would you factor this out. Okay? So, let us now proceed. These are now the different kinds of quadratic trinomials. Now, the perfect square trinomials. Okay. So, I want you class to have some observations. And I want you class to give some characteristics of this kind of quadratic trinomials, which is the perfect square. Yes, Miss Adeline?
To consider a perfect square trinomial, the first term and the last term has a perfect square root, and the middle term is equal to 2 times the product of the square root of the first term and the last term.
Okay, so yes, very good, Miss Adeline. So, Mary Rose, will you please repeat that?
We consider quadratic trinomials is a perfect square trinomials if both first and last term has a perfect square and the middle term is equal to twice the product of the square root of the first and last term.
So, yes, thank you, Miss Mary Rose. So, class, once we say perfect square, we are assuming that the term can be extracted, you can extract this square root. Okay? So that's what we mean by a perfect square. Alright? So, another one, class, is of course a trinomial which are not perfect squares. So you've got to consider also these conditions of a quadratic trinomials. Just because later on, so that you can have any other problem in taking its factors, right? So, what can you say about trinomials or quadratic trinomials which are not perfect? Any other observation? Yes, Mr. Willie?
We consider a trinomial which are not perfect if either first term or last terms are not perfect square.
Some other observations? Or can you repeat that? Yes, Miss Alilano?
We consider a trinomials which are not perfect square if either first term or last term are not perfect square.
there are some cases, class, or examples of a quadratic trinomials which are not perfect squares. Like this, x squared minus 8x minus 9. Both of this, the last term and the first term and the last term have perfect squares. But the middle term will be exactly different from the factors or the sum of the factors of those given square roots of these terms. Okay? So, these examples, class, as you notice, the first term, either the first term or the last term have all perfect squares. Okay? Not like the perfect squares, both the first term and the last term are perfect squares. Alright? So, let me give you examples. And I want you, class, to identify which of these examples are perfect or not perfect squares. Okay, so let us try the first one. Anybody? Yes, Mary Rose?
Y squared plus 6y minus 27 is not perfect.
What about the second one? Yes, Mr. Abarca?
X squared plus 18x plus 81 is a perfect square.
Yes. The third one? Yes, Miss Injunila?
4x squared plus 28x plus 49 is a perfect square.
Okay. So this the next one?
X squared minus 13x plus 12 is not a perfect square.
Okay. So the next one. Let us try this one. Yes, Mr. Pino.
X squared minus 16x plus 64 is a perfect square.
Okay, very good. So the next one? Melanie?
3x squared plus 11x minus 20 is not a perfect square.
Okay. Good. Mr. Mago?
14x squared minus 25xy plus 9y squared is not a perfect square.
Okay. Second to the last example, Miss Dice.
225x squared minus 60xy plus 4y squared is a perfect square.
Okay. Very good. The last one, Mr. Olive.
X squared minus 4x plus 4 is a perfect square.
Okay. So class, I think you are now ready to the next lesson. You have now identified from these examples quadratic trinomials which are perfect or not perfect squares. Alright. So let us now proceed to the second one. These are now, class, quadratic equations or quadratic expressions which are considered to be special, the special products, and of course factors. So the difference of two squares. Okay. So can you give some other observations regarding a quadratic expressions which is considered to be the difference of two squares? Okay, look at that.
We can consider a polynomial as the difference of two squares if it is consists of two terms only.
Alright. So, exactly correct, Renzel. So, as you notice, the difference of two square is consists of two terms only. Okay, very good. What else? Okay. Yes, Jerry?
Two terms has a perfect square.
Okay. So, very good, Mr. Jerry. So, is there any other observations, Mr. Olive?
The sign of the last term is always negative.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Olin. Okay. So, class, let us recap now your observations. Once we say difference of two squares, okay, there are two terms. And, of course, the first term and the second term are perfect squares. And take note, class, the last term is always negative. I just want you, class, to observe this one and remember this always. Because later on, in the factoring process, this kind of quadratic expressions have different factors. Alright? So, let us proceed now to the next one. So, this is another type of special products. The sum and difference of cubes. Okay. So, can you say something about this one?
We can consider that a polynomial is a sum and difference of cubes when it is consists of only two terms.
Okay. Is there any other observation, Mr. Marceliano?
In the sum and difference of cubes, the first term and the second term are both perfect cubes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Marceliano. And the last observation? Yes, Mr. Barcoma.
The polynomial can be considered as sum and difference of cube if the last term are either negative or positive.
Alright. So, exactly correct. Okay, class. So, look at now those polynomials which are the sum and difference of cubes. First, take note that it is consist of two terms only. Again, just like sum and difference of squares. And the first and the second term are perfect cubes. And of course, according to Mr. Barcoma, the last term is either a positive and a negative. Alright. So, this time, class, you are now ready to factor different kinds of quadratic trinomials in the sense that you can now consider or identify different kinds of quadratic trinomials. Now, in factoring these kinds of quadratic trinomials, you will notice, class, that each kind have different factoring techniques or different ways on how to factor this kind of quadratic trinomials. That's why I want you, class, to remember always the different characteristics of these different kinds of quadratic trinomials. Alright? So, let us now go back to the examples. Okay. So, let's start from a quadratic trinomials which are perfect squares. Okay, I want you, class, to factor now these kinds of perfect squares. Okay, are you ready now? So, 9x squared plus 12x plus 4. Anybody? I can try this. Yes? Miss Injonella. Go to the board and show your solution.
9x squared plus 12x plus 4. To get the factors of 9x squared plus 12x plus 4, we need to find the square root of the first term, 9x squared, which is 3x. And we need also find the square root of the last term 4, which is equal to 2. And we need to copy the sign of the middle term, which is positive. So the answer is 3x plus 2 squared.
Okay. So, very good, Miss Injonella. So, let us try now the second. example. Who can try this on the board? Yes, Mr. Bino.
16x squared minus 8x plus 1. To factor this, first, find the square root of 16x, which is 4x. Then, find the square root of the last term, which is positive 1. But the sign of the middle term is negative, so we put negative. Then squared, meaning it is a 2 binomial. To check the answer is correct, multiply 4x by 1 times 2, which is negative 8 equal to the middle term, negative 8x.
Okay, so the third one. Who can try that? Mr. Abarca.
X squared plus 12x plus 36 is a perfect square trinomial. To get the factor, first, get the square root of the first term, x squared, which is x. And also get the square root of the last term, 36, which is 6. We use positive because the middle term is positive. Quantity squared. To check the answer if correct, multiply x times 6, which is 6x, then multiply to 2, which is 12x. The answer is correct.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Abarca. And we come now to the last example. Miss Dice.
X squared minus 10x plus 25. To get the factor of 10x minus x squared minus 10x plus 25, first get the factor of x squared, which is x. Then get the factor of 25, which is 5. Then copy the sign of the middle term, which is negative. So the answer is x minus 5 quantity squared. To check the answer if correct, multiply x times 5, then multiply it by 2, then the answer is correct.
Okay. So class, before we go to the next kind of factoring, let us recap what you have stated a while ago on how to factor perfect square trinomials. Okay? So let us consider 9x squared, then what's that? Plus 12x plus 4. Okay. So if we factor this kind of expressions or trinomials, we take the square root of 9x squared. That's 3x. Okay? Then, take the square root also of the last term, which is 2. We use plus because the middle term in the given trinomial is plus. So we use plus. If it is negative or minus, we use minus. Okay? Then quantity square. What do you mean by this? Just because, class, the factors of this kind of trinomial must be two binomials which is exactly the same. Okay? So I hope you understand, class. Okay. So, let us now come to the next one. At this point, we consider now trinomials which are not perfect squares. How are you going to factor this?
X squared plus 7x plus 10. In getting the factor of the given trinomial which are not perfect, first,
Find the factor of the first term, which is x squared. The factor of x squared are x and x. Then after we find the factor of the first term, let's try to find the possible factor of the last term, which is 10. And what are those? Those are 1 times 10, negative 1 times negative 10, negative 2 times negative 5, and 2 times 5. To know which of these factors are correct to the factor of the given trinomial, let's make the middle term as our basis. The sum of the factor of the last term should be equal to the constant of the middle term. So I think we should use 2 times 5 because when we add 2 plus 5, it is equal to 7, which is equal to the constant of the middle term. So we use x plus 2 and x plus 5. That's the answer.
So let us now try the second example. Anybody who wants to try this one? Miss Alilan?
X squared plus 9x minus 10 is a trinomial which are not perfect square. But we can factor this by getting the factor of x squared. The factor of x squared is x times x. Now, we get the possible factor of negative 10, which are positive 10 and negative 1, negative 1 and 10, negative 2 times negative times positive 5 and negative 5 times 2. We use the positive 10 times negative 1 because the sum of this binomial is equal to the middle term, which is 9. Positive 10 and negative 1. So this is the answer.
Then we come now to the third one. X squared minus 8x minus 9. Who wants to do this? Yes, Terence.
X squared minus 8x minus 9. In getting the factor of this trinomial, first we need to do is to find the factor of the first term. The factor of the first term is x. After we get the factor of the first term, let's go to the last term. First, we find the possible factor of the last term. The possible factor of the last term is IR negative 9 times 1, negative 3 times 3. The correct possible factor for negative 9 is negative 9 times 1 because when we add the negative 9 to 1 is equal to negative 8. Because negative 8 is our basis because to find the possible factor, it should be equal to the middle term. So the answer is x minus 9 times x plus 1.
So, please take note, class, that these examples, as you can see, these examples, the value of A is equal to 1. So try to look at how this was factored. So the value of A is equal to 1. So take note on the way how this was factored out. Okay, so let us now proceed to the other example when the value of A is greater than 1. Just like 3x squared plus x minus 2. Okay, anybody who wants to try this one?
3x squared plus x minus 2. In getting the factors of a non-perfect square trinomial, we should first take all the possible factors of the first term, which is 3x and x. Then we should find all the possible factors of the last term, which are negative 2 and 1, or negative 1 and positive 2. But the sum of the cross products of these should be equal to the middle term, which is x. Let's try this. 3x times 1 equals 3x. And x times negative 2 equals negative 2x. The sum of this is equal to x, which is also equal to the middle term. So, the final answer will be 3x minus 2 times x plus 1.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Sebastian. Your answer is exactly correct. Okay, so let us have now the last one. I mean the second to the last one. 4x squared minus 10x minus 6. Okay, who wants to try this? Oh, Melanie?
4x squared minus 10x minus 6. To factor this expression, first, get the possible factors of the first term and the last term. The possible factors of 4 are 4 and 1, 2 and 2. Then the possible factors of negative 6 are negative 6 and 1, 6 and negative 1, negative 3 and 2, and 2 and negative 3. Negative 2 and 3. Then, we can now use cross product. First, using the cross product, first get a factor of 4 and a factor of 6. Example, 4 and 1 and negative 6 and 1. Then, multiply 1 and negative 6, which is negative 6, and 4 times 1, which is 4. Then add the product, equals to negative 2. The answer is wrong because the sum of the product should be equal to the middle term, which is negative 10. Then, let us use trial and error to get the right factor. Let us use 4 and 1 and 6 and negative 1. Multiply, then add 2, which is also wrong. Then, let us use 2 and 2. 2 and 2 and negative 6 and 1. Multiply 2 times negative 6, which is negative 12, and 2 times 1, which is 2. The answer, negative 2 plus 2 is negative 10. So these factors is correct. So the answer is 2x minus 6 and 2x plus 1.
This is what I told you, class. That this kind of quadratic trinomials is very complicated to factor. Just because you're going to take some trial and error just to get the correct, just to arrive at the correct factors. Just like what Lani have done. Ano? Okay. So, you've got to identify all the possible factors of 4x squared. What are those? So it should be 4x and x. Okay? 2x times 2x. So remember, these are now the factors of 4x squared. Okay? What else? So what about the last term? You can have negative 6. What are the possible factors of negative 6? With negative 6 and 1. That's right, Connie? Or you can have positive 6 and negative 1. Or you can have negative 3 and positive 2 and negative 2 and positive 3. So these are now the possible factors of negative 6, which is your last term. So you're going to make some pairings out of the factors from the first term. Okay, what are now the correct pairs of factors? So Lani have chosen examples which are not correct. So while 2x and negative 6, which is this one, times 2x plus 1. She got it correct. Why? Because if you multiply the outer, or I mean the inner product and the outer product, that's 2x times 1. That is now the outer product. Okay. This is on how to get or to determine if your answer is correct or not. Okay. So what is now the product of the inner product? So you have negative 12x and the outer product is 2x. Okay. You take the sum of the outer and the inner product. What do you think is the answer? Class. So that's negative. So 12x, negative 12x plus x, we got negative 10x, which is exactly equal to your middle term. Alright, class. So, I want you, class, to organize these steps in factoring this kind of quadratic trinomials. Alright? So I hope you understand. Okay. So, let us now, let me see if you can, Mr. Olit can try this one. Okay? Can you do this, Mr. Olit?
Yes, sir.
2x squared plus 7x plus 3. Alright. Mr. Olit.
2x squared plus 7x plus 3. First, we have to get the factor of the first term, which is 2x, and then x, and then next we have to find the factor of the last term, which is there are possible factor of 3, which is 3 times 1 and negative 3 times negative 1. And the possible factor is 3 times 1. So, 3 and 1. And the sign is positive, because the sign of the middle term is positive. And then the answer is 2x plus 1 and x plus 3.
Alright. So, thank you, Mr. Ulit. So, the correct answer is 2x plus 1 times x plus 3. Alright. Congratulations, class. You are now able to factor quadratic trinomials which are not perfect. Alright. So, I'm so happy with that. Okay. Let us now come to the special factors from a special product, which is the difference of two squares. Alright, let us now take the first example. X squared minus y squared. Again, as you notice, class, this one, just like what I told you before, now you've got to consider the characteristics of this particular products. Okay? Because there are some, there are different ways on how to factor this out. Okay. Number 1. X squared minus y squared. You can try this.
X squared minus y squared. The first thing we need to do is to find the square root of the first term and the last term. The square root of the first term is x, while the second term is the square root of the second term is y. And then write the sum and the difference of these two terms as a factor. And the answer is x plus y and x minus y.
Alright. Very good, Renzel. What about the expressions 4y squared minus 9? You can try this. Jerry.
4y squared minus 9. First, we get the square root of 4y squared, which is 2y and y. Second is we get the square root of the last term, which is 3 and 3. Then we get the sum and difference of the square root of 9, which is negative and positive. Then the answer of 4y squared minus 9 is the 2y minus 3 and 2y plus 3.
Alright. So, thank you, Mr. Jerry. Now, we take now this third example. Y squared minus 16y squared. Means dice.
Y squared minus 16x squared. First, get the square root of y, which is y and y. Then, get the square root of 16x squared, which is 4x and 4x. Get the sum and the difference of the given binomial. Then, now the answer is y plus 4x times y minus 4x.
Very good. So, the next one. 25a squared minus b squared. Miss Indianella.
25 a squared minus 4b squared. First, we need to find the square root of the 25a squared, which is equal to 5a. Then, we need to find the square root of the last term, 4b squared, which is equal to 2b. Since we are looking difference of two squares, we need to put the positive sign here and negative sign here. Then the answer is 5a plus 2b times 5a minus 2b.
Alright. Okay. So, that's exactly correct. Okay. The last one. 16b squared minus 49. Hello, Rose.
This is how to get the factor of the last example. 16b squared minus 49. First, get the square root of the first term. The square root of 16b squared is 4b. And the square root of the last term, which is negative 49, is 7. Then, write the sum and the difference of the given factors. Finally, the answer is 4b plus 7 times 4b minus 7.
Alright. So, you will take note, class, that in factoring difference of two square, you will notice that the factors are exactly the same. But only, it is expressed as plus and minus. That's why it is called sum and difference. Or you can express this as minus or plus, whatsoever, in any order. Alright. If you're going to multiply class, or I mean, if you take the inner product and the outer product of this case, you'll notice that the middle term will be equal to 0. Okay, that's why it becomes two terms now. Alright? So, I hope you understand, class. Okay, so we come now to the last example of special product and factors, which is the sum and difference of cubes. Okay. The first example is a cube plus b squared, b cube. Who wants to try this one? Okay. Mr. Plastic?
A cube plus b cube. In getting the factors of the sum and difference of cubes, we'll come up with the binomial and the trinomial factor. First, we get the factors of the binomial factors. In getting it, we first find the cube root of the first term, which is a cube, and equal to a. Then the cube root of the second term, b cube, is equal to b. We write the positive sign because it is the sum of two cubes. And in getting the trinomial factor, in getting the first term, we square the first term a equals a squared. And in getting the middle term, you find the negative product of the first and the second term, which is equal to negative a b. And to get the third term, you square the second term, which is b, equals positive b squared. Then the final answer will be a plus b multiplied by the quantity a squared minus ab plus b squared.
Alright. So, that's correct, Mr. Sebastian. Okay, let us try the second example. A cube minus b cube. Melanie.
A cube minus b cube. The factors of the difference of cubes have a binomial factor and a trinomial factor. To factor a cube minus b cube, first, we get the binomial factor by getting the cube root of the two terms. The cube root of a cube is a, and the cube root of negative b cube is negative b. So the binomial factor is a minus b. Then, we should get the other factor, which is a trinomial factor. To get the trinomial factor, the first term should be the square of the first term of the binomial factor. So it is a squared. Then the middle term should be a negative product of the product of a and negative b. So a times negative b is negative ab. The negative of negative ab is positive ab. Then to get the last term, we should square the last term of the binomial, which is positive b squared. So the factors of a cube minus b cube is a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared.
Okay. So, your answer is exactly correct. Alright. The third one? Bino?
X cube plus 8. First, find the cube root of x, which is x. Then, find the cube root of 8, which is positive 2. The first factor is x plus 2. The second factor must be a trinomial. To find the factor of this, multiply x by itself, so x squared. Then, to find the middle term, multiply x by 2. So it must be 2x. Then, multiply 2 by itself. So it is positive 4. Since the middle term is 2x and the sign of 8 is positive, we must put 2x as negative. Then, the factor is x plus 2 times x squared minus 2x plus 4.
Okay, we proceed now to the last example. A cubed minus A. Miss Asish.
X cubed minus 8. Binomial cube consists of binomial factor and trinomial factor. To get the binomial factor, extract the cube root of x cubed, which is x, and the cube root of 8, which is 2. Then connect it by the sign of the second term, which is negative. Therefore, the binomial factor of x cubed minus 8 is x minus 2. To get the trinomial factor of x cubed minus 8, square the first term of the first factor, which is x squared. And to get the middle term, get the product of the first term and the second term of the first factor, but the sign of it is the opposite. Example, positive 2x. And the last term, to get the last term, square the last term of the first factor. Negative 2 times negative 2 is equal to positive 4. Therefore, the trinomial factor of x cubed minus 8 is x squared plus 2x plus 4. Finally, the answer or the factor of x cubed minus 8 is equal to x minus 2 and x cubed plus 2x plus 4.
So, what are now the things to remember in factoring sum and difference of cubes? First, the two factors must consist of what? A binomial and a trinomial. Where are you going to find this one? Of course, you take the cube root of the first term, which is x, and the cube root of 8, which is negative 2. Now, how are you going to come up with the trinomial factors? You square the first term, and that should be the first term of the trinomial factor. The second term, the trinomial factor, came from the product of these two binomial factors. And you take the opposite sign. What do I mean by this? If your binomial factor is negative, it should be the sign of the middle term of your trinomial factor must be positive. Once it is positive, what I mean, if it is x plus 2, your sign must be negative. So it will be the opposite. Okay? And it will follow. If in case it is plus. Okay, so those are now class, the things to remember in factoring quadratic trinomials, which is sum and difference of cubes. Okay. So, let us now recap for all the things that we factor. For these are now your generalization or the things to remember. For perfect square trinomials. Okay. How are you going to factor it out? The factors must be two similar binomials. And how are you going to take that? Take the square root of the first and the last term of the given quadratic trinomials. And please take note that the middle term of the given trinomial are the squares of the product of the first and the second term. That should be the most important things for you class to remember. Okay. For a trinomial which are not perfect, how is it done? These are now the procedures. The first term of the two binomial factors are the factors of first term of the given trinomial. The middle term is the sum of the inner product and the outer product of the terms of the two binomial factors. And of course, for the last term of the two binomial factors must be the factors of the last term of the given quadratic trinomials. Okay. For the difference of two squares, get the square root of the first and second term of the given trinomial. Then, write the sum and difference of these two terms as factors, as stated a while ago. For sum and difference of cubes, again, one factor is a binomial, while the second factor is a trinomial. The binomial factor is the cube root of the two given terms. What I mean is the first term and the second term. For trinomial factor, it is consists of the square of the first term, meaning the binomial factor. The middle term is the product of the first and second term of the binomial factors, while the last term is the square of the second term of the binomial factor. Alright. So these are now all the things to remember. Okay. For you viewers at home, I want you to perform this one, and I want you to factor these examples. Alright? So 1 to 10. Okay, so I think you are now ready, class, to simplify rational expressions. Of course, you are now to apply what you have learned in factoring quadratic trinomials. Of course, with the special product and factors, the squares and the cubes. Okay, because what you have in here, class, are rational expressions in which the numerator and the denominators are quadratic trinomials and special products. Okay, let me see if you can still remember this factoring techniques and apply this in rational expressions. Okay. Are you ready? Who wants to simplify the first one? Mr. Barcoma.
To simplify x squared minus x minus 6 over x squared minus 4, we need to find the factor of the numerator and the denominator. First, we need to find the factor of the numerator. X squared is factored by x and x. The next step is find the factor of the last term. And the possible factor of the last term is equal to negative 3 and 2, negative 6 and 1. And I choose negative 3 and 2 because when it sums up, the answer is the middle term or negative x. The next, I find the factor of the denominator, which is x squared minus 4. X squared and find the factor of the last term, which is negative 4. The possible factor of negative 4 is negative 2 and 2, negative 4 and 1. but I use negative 2 and 2 because when it summed up, the answer is 0, which is in the middle term. And the common factor of that expression is x plus 2 and x plus 2. So I cancel it out. So the answer is x minus 3 over x minus 2.
Who can now try number 2? Yes, Mr. Willie?
2x squared plus x minus 1 over 5x squared plus 7x plus 2. First, we find the factor of the numerator. In this, the 2x, then x. Then the last term, which is 1 and 1. Use the sign negative here and positive here. Then the denominator, use 5x and x. Then the last term, the factor of the last term is 2 and 1. Use positive because all is positive. Then the same factor from the numerator and denominator, we cancel it out. Then the final answer is 2x minus 1 over 5x plus 2.
So we try now this one. Celis. A cubed minus B cubed and A squared minus B squared.
We have the expressions a cubed minus b cubed over a squared minus b squared. First, we have to find the factors of this expression, which is a minus b times a squared minus plus ab plus b squared over the factor of this expression, which is a minus b times a plus b. We have a common factors a minus b, so we cancel it out. And we have the final answer a squared plus ab plus b squared over a plus b.
The next one, Mr. Abarca.
To simplify expression 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 over 3x minus 2, we get the factor of the numerator since it is a perfect square trinomial, which is 3x minus 2 squared over 3x minus 2. We expand the numerator. 3x minus 2, 3x minus 2 over 3x minus 2. Now, we have a common factor 3x minus 2 and cancel it now. The final answer is 3x minus 2.
So may I call now the next one? Who wants to factor this? Mr. Mago?
X squared plus 2xy plus y squared over x squared minus y squared. The factor of the numerator x squared plus 2xy plus y squared is x squared at x plus y times x plus y. The factor of the denominator is x plus y and x minus y. As we learned before, the common factor should be cancelled. And we are going to cancel this. Therefore, the left are x plus y over x minus y.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mago. You have completed now the different exercises on how to simplify rational expressions. And of course, the different factors on how to factors quadratic trinomials. And to end up, viewers at home, I would like you to perform the different exercises, and I want you to submit that the next school day, on Monday. And before we end up our lesson for today, I just would like to give thanks to Pixel Production, and of course to the owner of Local Catb, Dr. Benvenuto Torres and Mrs. Marinette Torres. We would like to clarify to the viewers that we do not follow the actual classroom routines just because we would like to give more time in our remedial lessons so that these students can be able to follow, maximize their time in this show. So once again, this is Mr. Chody Magana, a teacher of Jose Panganiban National High School. We would like to greet you good day.